What's up guys, I'm Sean and welcome back to the channel. When I first got my new car almost a year ago, one feature that really excited me a lot was that it came with Apple CarPlay. So as someone who has been quite invested in the Apple ecosystem, the idea of having iOS system in my car was very appealing. So I've now used it almost daily for about a year and here is what I think about it. So a little introduction for those who aren't familiar with what Apple CarPlay is. Apple CarPlay is basically Apple's version of a car infotainment and navigation system. It was originally previewed at WWDC in 2013 and it was then called iOS in the car, but later renamed a year later to Apple CarPlay. It also underwent a major redesign leading up to its release, and this design is still very similar to what we have today. Now this system is run entirely off your iPhone through compatible head units, either via a lightning cable or wirelessly. It is designed to be as hands-free and distraction-free as possible while still giving you easy access to your music, phone calls, and navigation apps through things like Siri Integration, steering wheel buttons, and a touchscreen interface. It had a relatively slow rollout following its initial launch, but it is now fast becoming a standard feature on most new cars alongside its rival Android Auto. If a new car isn't on the cards for you though, don't fret because you can still easily get Apple CarPlay compatible head units aftermarket for much less than the cost of a new car. So after using it for about a year now, I have to say that while there is much to like about it given its simplicity, convenience and functionality, there are also some issues that annoy me quite a bit at times. So first we'll take a look at how the interface is designed, followed by a list of my pros and cons about the system and my final thoughts on it. On the interface, there's really not much new going on because it's really just a simplified version of iOS. You have the familiar home screens with the app icons on them, plus an additional combined view screen. The messaging apps are all strictly dictation only, with no content being displayed on the screen. Even content previews are disabled and there doesn't seem to be any option available to enable them. The apps themselves are as minimalist as it gets, having been optimized, or as some would say, dumbed down, to take as little focus away from the road as possible. So now let's go into some of the pros of Apple CarPlay. The first being that it runs directly off your iPhone. Now, I don't know about you, but having my car's head unit running directly off my iPhone has been a godsend. Conventional infotainment systems that car manufacturers have traditionally provided always require you to sync your contacts and your music the first time you plug it in. And from then on, if anybody else tries to plug your phone in or needs to use your car, say for the weekend or something, the system will usually end up trying to sync their phone in as well, and it just becomes quite a mess. I have also experienced some cheaper aftermarket head units that just simply refuse to save any of my data after I've switched off the engine, and will always prompt me to redo my syncing and my settings. None of this exists with Apple CarPlay because everything is stored and read off of your iPhone. So what you get when you connect your phone to the system for the first time is a prompt asking for your permission to allow the head unit to access your phone, and that is pretty much it. From then on, it just runs seamlessly off your iPhone, meaning all your contacts, your music, your call history, your favorite locations, your settings, and etc. are accessed completely from your iPhone without any need to sync it at all. This saves so much time and hassle compared to what we used to have to do with traditional OEM units. I mean, I'm even having flashbacks to those bootloaded CD changes, if you remember what those are. So despite its early issues, I have to say that Siri has improved to the point where it does work about 8 out of 10 times whenever I try to use it. Apple CarPlay has integrated Siri into the controls of the system where you can either say the magic words, "Hi Siri," or in some cases there is a dedicated voice activation button on the steering wheel which will call up Siri for you. This should be a pretty welcoming feature for those of you who frequently make use of Siri for your everyday tasks. Admittedly, I am not one of those people, which brings me on to my next point. Now, I have said it before that I am not a fan of touch controls on a car because they have a tendency to make you take your eyes off the road. However, the very idea of iOS itself is a large touchscreen. So why would I still say that this thing is optimized for driving? It is just because I think that they have done a particularly good job at optimizing their interface to require as little finger precision as possible. I mean, especially for those of us who don't use Siri, Apple has designed a driver-friendly interface that features big and unambiguous action buttons throughout this interface. This design language greatly reduces the amount of attention needed to accurately tap on the correct buttons, which has been my main issue with touch controls in a car. Also, because it is Apple's own design language, it provides a great degree of familiarity for existing iOS users, which further minimizes the amount of focus that it takes away from the road. However, in spite of this driver-friendly interface, it must be said that those of us who do have music controls on our steering wheel will hardly ever need to take our hands off the wheel. The only times I actually ever do are if I want to switch over to a different app such as Google Maps, or if I just want to change my playlist. So even in these cases, the touchscreen controls are so well sized and highly visible that there's minimal brain power that's actually needed to hit the correct buttons. Of course, that is not to say that Apple CarPlay is perfect, and there are quite a few areas that I wish could be further improved, which I will now go into. Now, the first con is actually kind of a mixed bag here, because it's kind of a pro and a con, and that is that it does not allow any form of video playback whatsoever. Now, I know that some of you, including myself, would scoff at the inability to play videos on that nice screen of ours, but it's admittedly the right decision, and I really shouldn't have to explain why. Now, this one is actually one of my biggest gripes about Apple CarPlay. I don't know if it's just me, although I highly doubt so, but I do experience some relatively major software bugs a bit more often than I would expect from a finished product. For example, there are times when after finishing a phone call, my music or any form of audio would refuse to continue playing. Now, I don't mean that I have to manually resume playing my music, but rather that I simply cannot play anything. Restarting the head unit doesn't work either, and the only way that I'm able to solve this is by completely shutting off the engine and then restarting it. Not very ideal mid-journey. I have found a way to prevent this, however, and I don't know why it works, but basically I have to end the call before the other party does. I still have no idea why it works, but if any one of you finds that I am abruptly hanging up on you, please know that it's probably because of this. Another less serious but equally annoying one that I've encountered is that certain songs randomly seem to become unplayable and skip over to the next track, and sometimes a few in succession. All my attempts to try and play these tracks again, whether it's through the head unit or even on my phone, are futile. It does solve itself the moment I disconnect my phone from the head unit and I can start to play my music again, but more often than not, when I do this, I am unable to reconnect the phone to the unit until after I've shut off the engine and restarted it. I've only encountered this issue a handful of times though, so maybe it was quietly fixed in a recent update, but we'll see. App selection is one area that has been a bit of a letdown so far. The iOS ecosystem prides itself on having the most app-rich platform around. However, the selection of apps compatible with Apple CarPlay are really quite limited. Well, I suppose you really don't need more than your usual maps, phone, music, and messages, preferably not messages, which are admittedly already quite well represented in Apple CarPlay. I can't help but feel limited by the less than stellar selection of apps available for CarPlay. If I were to make a suggestion, I would ask that car-specific app developers really consider enabling their apps to work with Apple CarPlay, especially those apps that provide in-depth vehicle telemetry and data logging. I think that would be really quite appealing to quite a lot of drivers. Now, for sure, iOS is not particularly known for their customization, but even so, CarPlay's level of customization makes your iPhone feel like an Android. You see, apart from the basic audio settings, practically the only customization that I can find actually came in a not so recent update, which allowed you to change the background of your home screen. But you are only allowed to choose from Apple's selection of preloaded backgrounds. I have also found no way to customize the position of the apps on your home screen, just like we would on iOS. If any of you have found any other level of customization beyond what I've just said, please let me know. Now, having both praised and ranted about the good and the bad of Apple CarPlay, here's where I stand on its current state. As you can probably already tell, Apple CarPlay is far from perfect and would probably benefit from a bit more development. But even so, it does achieve what it was designed to do, and it does it quite well. So apart from the annoying bugs that I experience every now and then, for the most part it has been a rather pleasant experience, and the negatives are really not that important when you consider that this is meant to be a distraction-free system. Perhaps Apple actually realized this and decided, okay, there's no need to rush into adding more features just for the sake of it, because this is how it is supposed to work. So we'll just focus on improving its stability and making subtle refinements along the way. In any case, the usability and convenience that it affords me far outweigh the things that annoy me, and I even go so far to say that I probably find it hard to consider a brand new car if it did not come with Apple CarPlay compatibility. I'd love to hear how you feel about Apple CarPlay, so please leave your comments down below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and a subscribe. It costs you absolutely nothing, but it helps us out a ton. I'll see you next time.